Dziękuję. Agus filter od Ishtok. It's Misha Drolene. Will to Gama. Are you well? It's your friend the Wren back again. So Druids and Stonehenge, what's it all about? Welcome to Magic Mondays. I was sick last week. I apologize. And the content for that video is kind of scrapped. So I'm going to do last week's Magic Monday video as just a regular vid. But this week's Magic Monday, let's have a bit of a chat about the Druids and Stonehenge. And I'm going to smoke and drive. It looks a bit vibraty, but I can't really change that. Okay? Right. Now the Druids are associated, and they have been associated with Stonehenge for a very long time. And I was chatting with a friend from India the other day, and he said, well, the Druids built Stonehenge. And I was like, no, they didn't. And so many people are under this belief that the Druids built Stonehenge. The Druids are associated with the Celtic tribes from the Iron Age and have nothing to do with the Neolithic culture that was thousands of years before that. So whoever the people were that built Stonehenge, that designed it and used the math and the skills to do so, I guess you could call them proto-druids if you wanted to. I don't really think that's a fair term to use, but they were probably somewhat like the Druids insofar as they were the most knowledgeable of their people at that time. But that's really as much as we know. We don't know too much about the Neolithic culture, with what their social structure was like and what their religion was like, what gods they had. We don't know squat about that stuff. You'll have to excuse the random pauses. I'm driving. Traffic seems to be somewhat busy today. And I'm in an area where there's a school that's being let out. And because school's being let out, there's lots of police officers. So why do Druids go to Stonehenge today? Well, there's some thought about this, is that the Druids of today, modern Druids, know that it's old. It's very old, and it's definitely not a church. What exactly Stonehenge is, that's up for debate too. But they know it's associated with their ancestors. So it's a place to have ceremony and ritual that does correspond or correlate with agricultural festivals and festivals that deal with the sun. This is really shaky, so I apologize. So you'll see mass gatherings of Druids, or even the public celebrating summer solstice, and to a lesser extent winter solstice, even though, in my opinion, Stonehenge was actually more of a winter solstice place than a summer solstice place. So you see these modern Druid orders, these neo-Druids, and some of them being more of a do I dare say, social club or Rotary type organization get together, to celebrate their brand of modern Druidry, which is very much based in Freemasonry and Christian mysticism and other things as well. Not fully, I would say. It's definitely not Celtic. It doesn't really vibe with the culture that was the Iron Age people. And you have them wearing their long white robes, which is also a contention that Druids didn't wear long white robes like that. But having been there myself more than once, and having had ritual there myself too, I can tell you that it's not a very big place. It looks big, but once you're inside of it, it's not made for the masses. It's not made for lots of people to be inside of it. And we know with the construction that it took, thousands of years to make in stages, then who was it made for? There's lots of questions that you can ask. What is it for? What was done there? Who built it? Why did they build it? How was it built? Some of these things we have a pretty good understanding. How it was built, where the stones came from. It's been studied for a very long time. Like the Persili blue stones inside Stonehenge, the smaller ones, are associated with a lunar calendar, and they came from Wales, like 200 miles away. So obviously they were important enough to bring from 200 miles away. If you have a chance, you should look up the comedian Eddie Izzard. He did a bit about Druids and Stonehenge, and it was pretty funny. But we have all these stories that connect Merlin and giants, and it really bothers me when people associate the Druids with Stonehenge. Yes, we've been going there publicly for 200 years plus, when there was this great Celtic revival, in a way, in the UK back in the 1700s. People started practicing a version of modern Druidry back then. And they did so by going to these wonderful places. Avebury is another place. Silbury Hill, Glastonbury Tor. But all these Iron Age peoples that came out, like these Druids that came out of the Iron Age, these Celtic tribes, both on the continent and in the Isles, had nothing to do with that Neolithic culture. By that time period, you could argue that those places were abandoned. The Celts themselves did not know who built them either. So to them, they were foreign, strange places of mystic and awe, wonder. And you have to wonder, too, if the Druids of that Celtic Iron Age knew what those places were for, or how to use them, or if something was passed down to them that we also don't have ourselves. But since this is Magic Monday, and we're focusing on magic, there's a magic behind Stonehenge that draws you to the place. You know it's special. You know it's sacred. You want to go there. You want to be in there. What do you do? Why are you there? There's been some talk that it resonates sound differently. If you know anything about consciousness, that certain wavelengths and vibrations can affect your, not necessarily your mood, but your state of consciousness. Droning sounds, drumming, chanting, done with inside Stonehenge would have a reverberatory type of effect. And if you can imagine possibly being under the influence of a psychedelic substance, you're there at an auspicious time, you're trying to communicate with ancestors, it's dark, you have the flickering of torches, and you're being led on some sort of journey by, do I dare say, a shaman type figure, or a priest, or whatever some spiritual leader, maybe to commune with ancestors. And there was dancing, or drumming, or something was going on there, that you would have a shift in consciousness. I can tell you that when I was there last with my order, when the Awen was being chanted, for a split second or two after it was done, a couple of us looked around and looked at each other because we heard it. We could just barely hear it, but there was a singing of the stones. They talked back. You could hear some sort of vibration still lingering. So the modern magic of Stonehenge is different than what it was probably for the Celtic people, and much different than it was for those Neolithic people that built it. And who's to say if it was ever even finished or not? We're talking about a time in the Neolithic period when, for a very long time, people were hunters and gatherers, and all the big game was killed off, and they started tinkering with agriculture for about 5,000 years. So they went, in a way, from a lunar people to being tied to a farmstead, to a piece of property that was solar. So, without abandoning their old traditions, they built Stonehenge in such a way that honored the moon and the sun. But was it made for onlookers? Was it made for a special elite? Was it made for maybe just the people that went through a difficult time that year, that lost members of their family, and they were the ones entitled to enter? Who's to say? And don't forget, we had Woodhenge that was just up the river, and it was also used at the same time periods. So maybe the feasting was done in one place and the ritual was done at the other. But what you don't realize about Stonehenge is those 3 dots in the parking lot are those 3 post holes that were there long before the first construction of the first stones. So who were those people? Because it wasn't the builders for Stonehenge. So the modern Druids, Neo-Druids, and other pagans alike, gather at stone circles that are not necessarily Stonehenge. And they gather at these Neolithic places because it's connected to the ancestors. And ancestry is extremely important in all pagan traditions. I use that umbrella term pagan because, there's witches and there's all sorts of different branches within the pagan world of culture. And some people are very eclectic, and they still go to these places. They go there to meditate. They go there to connect with nature. And after all, isn't that kind of the big pull in paganism, is some sort of connection with nature, the seasons, the festivals, ancestors, and then, to an extent, one's gods. So you'll see people throughout the Isles, the UK, Cornwall, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, Isle of Man, and probably even places like in Brittany. Now, there are Neolithic places scattered all over Europe, but they're not as densely populated as they are in the Isles. And there's some theories about, the Atlantic people. Not Atlantis, but the Atlantic seaboard, and where people traveled and how they migrated over the years up and down the Atlantic seaboard. Portugal, Spain, all the way up to Ireland and whatnot, and up to Scotland. And you see a lot of these places more coastal instead of inland. There's theories on that too. There's lots of good books to read. But even nowadays, you'll see Druids, modern Druids, building stone circles in their yard, in the woods, in places where no Neolithic places, no Neolithic people were. Even here in America, you'll have modern Druids build a stone circle, even though it wasn't connected with the Celtic people. There's something about working, doing magic, celebrating, honoring, and connecting with the land, like creating a hollowed spot, working with just this space inside here. Instead of casting a circle, you already have a circle. There's something about there's a pull that it kind of creates this an energy by constantly working in the same spot over and over and over again, that the stones kind of remember. There's a stone memory that they absorb and radiate this energy that's built up at this place. And once you kind of work at a place like that long enough, and there's memories there, it attracts things to that place differently. But Stonehenge is special because there's no other place that's like it. There's lots to really question with... Oh, this is a bit precarious. Give me a second, please. Traffic is horrible. I'm under a light. People must be getting out of work early or something. I do apologize, but I'd rather not die. I'd rather wait for this light and then scoot. Holy jeez, would you... They're coming out fast. And there's no break in traffic. Can't even go. And we're going. Alright. But yeah, there's lots to study with Stonehenge. What's the henge? What part is that? It's the embankment. It's the there's the avenue, there's the heel stone, there's the altar stone, there's the trilithons, there's the blue stones, there's the sarsens. What does it all mean? There's lots of theories behind it. I can tell you that no one has nailed it, but there's some scholars that have put a dent into what's more probable than not. But it's still conjecture. It's not a burial place. Did it have a roof? Were there still post holes with other posts around it when it was being used? No. If you know anything about the site, you know that there's an avenue that was used as a procession. And walking up the avenue was you walk towards the sacred site, and it's before you. And if you picture yourself walking up the avenue, approaching the site, and then you slowly enter, you would notice that when it was fully erected, the largest trilithon would be right in front of you. The tallest one, I should say. Did you ever go to a Catholic church? Even a Christian church, but specifically a Catholic church. And notice that there's 3 doors in the front. But you go down the center aisle. And that center aisle has what? A procession. A couple of stairs, an altar. Behind the altar is the priest. Behind the priest is a giant crucifix. Sometimes there's Jesus on the crucifix and sometimes there's not. But it's showing you visually what is the most important thing. It's showing you in a Catholic church that the focus is in the center. The altar, the priest, and the God. It would be the same at Stonehenge. When you see the giant trilithon, then what happened at that giant trilithon? The sun used to set behind that trilithon on winter solstice. The longest night and the shortest day of the year, the sun would set behind that trilithon, shining through a gateway that you could not pass between, you could not walk between. The sun would shine through it onto either that person or the altar stone that stood right there. At sunset, which is what? Oh, that's dusk. It's an in-between time. It's liminal. Right? So then why do all the Druids gather there at summer solstice? Well, at summer solstice, the sun, when it's rising over the horizon on the longest day of the year, the shortest night, shines down the avenue and into the enclosure, if you would call it that. I like to think of it in a way that the sun peeks over the horizon and shines its first rays of the summer solstice down that avenue and into the enclosure in such a way to impregnate. The light is entering the womb. And just like the ancestors might be coming back to visit or leaving the spirit world to join us by being born at winter solstice. You see a lot of sites like Newgrange in Ireland, Brunboyne, that the winter solstice light shines down the chamber to light up the back of the chamber of Newgrange. And we know that that place was a burial chamber. It had to do with the dead. It had to do with the ancestors. So I guess that's a good way of looking at Stonehenge, is it's always probably had something to do with light, liminal space, liminal time. It has to do with the ancestors. And it has to do with something with the other world. Whatever those things were for those people, we don't know. But as modern Druids, we can honor that in our space, in our time, here and now. So it might not be as important or as special to us as it was for them, because we don't know what it was for those people that were in the Neolithic. But for us to say that it's not special and not important to all pagans that are here and now would be silly, because it does mean something to all of us. Because ask yourself this: if you had a chance to go there by yourself and wander around, which you can do, I won't tell you how to do it, but you can. But you can get legal permission to do that. If you had the chance to go there, to spend time there for an hour in the morning, you have to pay money to do it. But what would you do? Picture yourself there. You're at Stonehenge alone. What do you do? What do you say? Do you say anything? Do you just walk around and touch the stones? You find yourself there, you're walking around. You're walking around clockwise. Why? Do you sit down? Do you close your eyes? Do you put your back up against the stone? Do you just listen? Maybe spend quiet time there. No. Picture yourself there with your Druid order. Picture yourself there with friends and family as a tribe. Picture yourself there with your coven. Picture yourself there with a group of people. What do you say? What do you do? Why are you there? Is it different in your mind, in your imagination, for being there solitary versus being there with a group? Why is it different being with a group than being there by yourself? No, most years you're allowed to go to Stonehenge publicly for summer solstice. Yes, you're going to be dealing with a lot of partying, littering, debauchery, people disrespecting the stones and climbing on them, police presence, drumming, drugs, thousands of people, like thousands of people. But maybe, just maybe, those people that are there spiritually and socially are doing what's always been done there. It's an observatory. It marks the calendar. It marks the seasons, the solstices and the equinoxes, the moon phases. It's special, it's sacred, it's important. But it doesn't necessarily have to be serious. I think people often forget that in their path. That just because something is sacred, special, holy, and divine, that it also can't be fun or silly. we have this preconceived notion given to us, maybe even from Christianity, that things have to be very serious when it comes to celebrating. And I don't think that's proper. I mean, you don't want to be a complete gobshite. But at the same time, having a light heart, having an exploratory innocence of a child, and having fun. You're there to celebrate. You know? Who's that comedian? Danny Boy. When he's talking about learning hymns as a child and singing them at schools, you know, God is great and we are shit. God is great and we are shit. You know, that's the expectation. God is great and we are shit. It's okay to have a bit of brevity and to be loose and to feel good and to celebrate joyfully. You're there to celebrate, not to mourn. I mean, you're not there for a party, but you're there for a good time. Still a wee bit sick. So, if you take anything from this video today, I want you to focus on the fact that celebrating your faith should be fun. And don't be so serious. And that if you want to build a stone circle, build one yourself. There's a creative way to do it too. You could get stones that you're fond of and carry them in a pouch and lay them in a circle wherever you go. And then you have a portable stone circle. And I have one, and my stones are Perselli blue stones. You can buy small tumbled stones and use whatever stones you like. You can erect boulders. You can move small headstones, like the size of a head. Plant a garden around it. Plant trees around it. But if you work in a circle of stones, things will change. Your practice will change for the better. Our ancestors did this. Now, some stone circles were probably used as a threshing floor for grain, and probably had no astrological alignments, and any alignments tied to the places could be speculative. Maybe that place was just used for gathering, some sort of court or legal disputes. We don't know. So Druids use stone circles. Druids go to Stonehenge. But it's not just for Druids. It's for everybody. So for any group or order, or I would dare say culture, to claim it as their own is kind of silly. Because we know even the builders were coming from all sorts of places throughout the land. There's early Bronze Age burials outside of Stonehenge where they've done the science to tell that these people came from Germany. The gold found in there was from the mainland. So there was trade and there was travel. Stonehenge has always pulled people in. You know, there's talk of the ley lines that's built on this grid. It's hard to say. We know it's sacred, we know it's special, we know it's important, but we don't know why. And I think that's what the allure is for people that practice magic and people that are looking to connect with nature and community, the divine, the seasons, and ancestors. And that's all there is really to it. So yeah, that's all for now. I will get back with you guys at another time. I hope you're all well. And if you forgot, my shameless plug here is I have an Etsy shop. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I take custom orders for things. I love making new things. So check stuff out. Drop me a line. Follow me. Check out my links. Some of my stuff would make great stocking stuffers. But I'm wishing you well. Toga Boge. Slumgapol. Cheers.